Hello, my name is Brian Lewis, and I'm an instructor at JTNS in the Public Works Division. So today we're here to talk about backhoe and excavator safety and review some of the issues and things we need to talk about there. But before we get started, what I'm going to do is ask you to pause the video and talk about any near misses and or accidents you may have had, discuss what you need to do to make sure they don't happen again. And then when you get finished, please press play and we will continue with backhoe and excavator safety review. So I hope you've had a fruitful discussion. It's always important to review any near misses and accidents and make sure we get those things squared away. Make sure they don't happen again or an accident doesn't occur that's associated with a near miss. So when we talk about backhoe and excavator safety review, we're going to talk about overturns. We're going to talk about falls. We're going to talk about runovers and contact with other people and contact with objects that are in the area, whatever that may be. It's important that we try to talk about these events and the context of the safety and health hierarchy of engineering controls, administrative controls, and personal protective equipment. And as we go through this, you're going to find that engineering controls are limited to the operator and what goes on inside the piece of heavy equipment. But everything else is going to depend on us using administrative controls and PPE. So we really need to be strong in these areas to prevent accidents and near misses, especially when we talk about overturns, which is unfortunately more common than we want. So we need to make sure we do what we need to do to make sure that the ground is stable below us and that the machine is in uh, good operating condition. And we do proper preventative maintenance and do a really good job briefing so that everyone knows what to expect while they're on the work site and square those things away once again to prevent overturns and tragedies from occurring due to the overturns. So, one of the things that I like to encourage people to do is take time and look around, do a walk around of the area, notice any kind of slopes or soft ground you're going to have to pay particular attention to. Uh, Always keep in mind the center of gravity. We want to keep it as low and as uphill as we possibly can, which means sometimes we need to turn uphill and not downhill. It also means that if we're using a bucket, an articulating arm, that it needs to be going uphill so we can move the center of gravity uphill. We want to prevent overloading, which will shift the weight, shift the center of gravity, and we want to make sure we do not unintentionally undercut the stabilizers or outriggers, which is possible when you get really focused on what you're trying to do. And sometimes we get so focused we miss the things that are right in front of us. Unfortunately, falls make up roughly 25% of all recordable injuries. That's the latest statistics I've heard. It used to be 15%. Now, when we talk about recordable injuries, we talk about events where people actually had to get medical attention beyond first aid. So we're talking about broken bones, sprained wrist, ankles, bad backs, hips, those kinds of things. We want to avoid those if at all possible. It's important that we pay attention to what we're doing. We're just human, and sometimes we need a little help with reminders. So to prevent falls, we want to use 3 points of contact when we enter one of these pieces of heavy machineries like a backhoe or track hoe or excavator or anything else like that. We want to make sure that what we do is have good footing, make sure that our shoes are not too slick or anything like that. We want to make sure that what we do is appropriate and have good grip. And so we need to pay attention there. Once we are inside that piece of heavy equipment, whether it be a backhoe, a track hoe, or an excavator, what we definitely want to do is make sure that we use our seat belts. Now, I've personally investigated events where people came out of the seat of their backhoe and had some crushing injuries due to the canopy or the ROPS, the rollover protection system, pinning them against the ground. Thankfully, they were not killed. However, they endured injuries that last a lifetime. That last a lifetime. So we don't want that for anyone, right? We want everyone to go home safe with all their faculties, all their fingers and toes, and enjoy their life. Enjoy their life with their family and their friends. We also don't want to let anyone ride the machine. Typically, these machines have one seat that's for the operator, and no one else should be on that machine going down the road. That's just really safe. One of the first safety rules, right? If there's not a seat and a seat belt there for you, you should not be riding that piece of equipment. So keep that in mind. I know sometimes it might be a little fun and it might save a few steps, but it's not safe and we shouldn't be doing it. So please keep that in mind. Now, when we talk about runovers in contact with other people, this is particularly dangerous, especially for anyone that's working in and around the heavy equipment. So we want to be very careful. We want to use administrative controls. When you work around a piece of heavy equipment like a backhoe or track hoe, you want to face that machine so you can see what the operator's doing. The operator wants to face or needs to face you. You do not want to approach that piece of equipment until the operator lowers the bucket or articulating boom, and then when he does that and gives you the signal that you can approach and have a discussion with them, that's really important. It's really important that we have good communication, good communication between the operator and people that are on the ground working, making sure that we know what to expect from each other. Use your job briefing, follow the plan, don't surprise. Don't surprise the operator, and the operator does not need to surprise the people on the ground. After the job briefing, you may think, hey, I know a better way to do this, but if you've not discussed it, you don't do it. So, as I've said before, when examining the ground, we want to do a pre-operation check. We want to make sure we know what the swing radius is, and we do not want to violate that swing radius, not step into that swing radius. You are not going to win against that metal, that bucket, that articulating boom. So we do not violate that. And backhoes, track hoes move besides the articulating boom and the bucket. So we want to be careful and pay attention to what's going on there. We want to check our surroundings, make sure we have good footing and that we know exactly what we're going to do. And as I've already mentioned, we want to work out and remind coworkers how to approach the backhoe. There's been too many incidents where people have gotten hurt and killed just simply because they lost concentration and they approached a piece of heavy equipment without really considering the consequences of what was going to happen when they surprised that operator. So we want to follow the operating instructions that's contained in the operator's manual for that piece of heavy equipment. As I've already mentioned, but it's important to mention multiple times, workers on the ground need to face the operator and they need to have good communication with the operator, make sure it is safe to approach that piece of equipment. Before doing so, make sure that the operator can clearly see you and know what's going on. In most instances, that means the bucket needs to be lowered, set on the ground, and the machine turned off before the operator dismounts. That's a really big deal. Don't let anyone stand under a bucket. As most of you all know, hydraulics leak, hydraulic hoses burst. Doesn't always happen every day, but if you're between that piece of heavy equipment and the bucket and something along those hydraulic lines ruptures, the operator's going to lose control of that bucket, and it's going to be a caught in between incident. You do not want to be caught in between a piece of heavy equipment and an articulating boom or bucket. So that's just not going to work out well. It's not going to work out well. So we want to avoid that at all costs. Now, when we talk about contacts with objects, most of our work sites are going to have other pieces of equipment. There's going to be fixed uh, material there. There's going to be buildings there. There may be walls, may be block walls or concrete walls. There may be traffic that we have to consider. There may be a trench box on site, which if there's a trenching excavation operation uh, and it's more than 4 feet deep or more than 5 feet deep, depending on what your rules are, the OSHA standard says if it's 5 feet deep to 20 feet deep, you definitely need some kind of protection system. Uh, Above, or I should say more shallow than 5 feet, the competent person has to make sure that it's safe without a protection system. Some other objects we need to worry about are underground utilities, overhead utilities. We want to support underground utilities. We don't want to take a chance on those utilities being damaged or rupturing. We want to make sure we do not violate the minimum approach distance for overhead power lines. May need a spotter for that. The minimum approach distance is 10 feet for anything under 50,000 volts, and if it goes over 50,000 volts, then you have to increase that distance. It's important to realize that the air around these overhead power lines, the distribution lines, the insulation is the air around them. So we don't want to get into that void, right? We want to have spotters for buildings and other fixed places, walls, things like that. And as I've already mentioned, we want to pay attention to the swing radius and make sure we don't violate that swing radius, whether it's a person or it's an object, it's a wall, a building, whatever it may be. I appreciate you all listening. I appreciate your time. Here at JTNS, we don't have every answer on the tip of our tongue, but if you've got a question, please contact your JTS instructor. As I said, we may not have the answer right then and there, but what we will do our very best if we don't know the answer is to do research and get you a good answer. May not always be the answer you want to hear, but it will be an answer that gives you some guidance on how to stay safe and be really conservative with regards to safety and health. Thank you. Have a good day.